Hello, welcome to this week's edition of the MMA Freak Fighter of the Week. I'm Matthew Salzer again. So this last weekend it was UFC International Fight Week, so I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I'm actually going to give two fights of the week. Basically a tie because two of the fighters two fighters just did so well that I feel like it would be an injustice to do otherwise. So the first things first. I'm going to talk about just the UFC International Fight Week in general. So UFC International Fight Week 2017. So it was a little scaled down from what it's been in past years. In past years, it's gotten like huge. It's been the whole week. You've had wrestling tournaments, grappling tournaments, taekwondo, the amateur MMA championships. You know, it's been this big all-out thing, and then on top of that, you've had a third fight. So I mean, a third fight card. You'd have had a fight night before either the finale or the UFC pay-per-view. Either way, it's usually just this big all-out thing. But I think the UFC is starting to realize that they're oversaturating themselves. They're spreading themselves thin. They're overexposing themselves. I think because of that, I think they're starting to realize, maybe we need to scale down a little bit. So as a result, it was a little bit shorter. It wasn't the whole week. It was a few days. It started after the 4th of July. And one of the highlights, aside from the actual fights themselves and the UFC Fan Expo, was the Hall of Fame inductees. And this year we had Maurice Smith. Basically, they championed him as the pro-type sprawl and brawler. He was like the first striker who was able to stand up against a wrestler in Mark Coleman. I guess I think there's more qualified people. I think Frank Shamrock needs to get in there. He might eventually, but not this time. Kazushi Sakuraba. That was deserved. That definitely, the guy's a legend. Interestingly enough, he doesn't have that many actual championships under his belt. For a guy who did both pro wrestling and MMA, he'd done them both all of his life, and he doesn't have any championships under his belt. He's basically been a journeyman, but a very accomplished one, very accomplished pioneer, and he was a UFC Japan tournament winner, so you got to give him that credit. So it was great to see that kind of an induction, to see him at the events. He was at both the Ultimate Fighter finale and he was at UFC 213. So it was great. It was great to see him. It was great to see him get that induction. It was well deserved. Uriah Faber, again, very well deserved. He basically made the lighter weights when he was in the WEC, and it's just one of those things where he just was not able to grab UFC gold, and it's kind of a bummer to see that. But the fact of the matter is, he lost to better fighters. I mean, I don't know what else to say there. He just wasn't able to cut it against other fighters. But it was well deserved, and he's definitely doing some groundbreaking stuff, like getting a corporate sponsorship with Team Alpha Male. I mean, that thing is huge. To get a sponsorship and get scholarships and stuff like that, that's something that all fight teams need to strive for. All fight teams need to strive for what Uriah Faber has, because Team Alpha Male was a good fight team to begin with. And now they're only going to get better. So, he's still breaking ground, and I'm sure that he's always going to have. Well, one example, he's doing the alternative commentary with Snoop Dogg on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, which debuts tonight, by the way. I am filming it before that, but anyways, yeah, and then Joe Silva again, well deserved. He was a contributor. It was again well deserved. He deserved it. He was in there for the longest time. He was in there during the Semaphore Entertainment Group era, through the Zuffa era, and his timing was just convenient with the WME IMG buyout. They were downsizing. They went through that huge downsizing when they bought the company. Shipping a lot of their production from the UFC Las Vegas Zuffa offices to just the WME IMG offices in Los Angeles. But he said he retired, and again, well deserved. I think this Hall of Fame class, they certainly deserve it. I do think that there were people who could have gone ahead of Maurice Smith. I think obviously the biggest white elephant in the room is always going to be Frank Shamrock. Until he gets inducted, he's not going to be. A lot of people are gonna say that the UFC Hall of Fame is lacking there. So that was that. So for the actual fights, so the Ultimate Fighter 25 finale, I picked an obvious choice. My pick for the Fighter of the Week there is Justin Gaethje. He won both the Fight of the Night and the Performance of the Night bonus, and he did it making his UFC debut. There were points where he was just scant. He could have easily lost that fight, but he came back, and congrats to Justin Gaethje. You beat a big name fighter, and you welcome to the UFC. I hope that he definitely capitalizes on that, and then. And also, it was great to see Jesse Taylor finally get that also elusive win that he'd strived for, that he basically blown off. And Jesse Taylor is the physical embodiment of this season of the Ultimate Fighter and the theme Redemption. I said that in my review of the season as a whole on MMAfreak.com, but it was one of those things where he was the physical embodiment. He was there on season 7 and he blew it because of a night of celebrating, and he got kicked off the show. And he spent the last almost decade. I'm just gonna say almost decade. I mean, it was a little bit shorter than that, but almost a decade fighting in other promotions. And here it was getting coached by his Cal State Fullerton teammate. I remember when those guys were at Cal State Fullerton. I'm an Orange County native. Back when Cal State Fullerton had a wrestling team, I remember when those guys were tearing it up at Cal State Fullerton. And so yeah, it was nice to see him finally get that also elusive win. He's finally gotten where he wanted to be in the UFC. It's great to see him get that. And then for UFC 213, honestly, it's a dark horse. Robert Whittaker. I wouldn't have picked him to win against Ronaldo Jacare. I did not, but he did, and I wasn't picking him to beat Yoel Romero either, but he did. And here's the thing: I don't know if Yoel Romero. I don't know if it's just that he's old and that's why he doesn't have cardio, because that was one of the big factors, was the cardio. He didn't do it in the latter rounds. He didn't do it in the third round. He didn't do it in the championship rounds. That's what lost him the fight. Yeah, it's easy to control the first 2 rounds. It's not easy to control the latter rounds. And like I said, I don't know if it's just because he's older. He's 40 years old, or if it's just the fact that he was just always used to wrestling in a 6-minute match. Wrestling matches are 6 minutes. They're depending on the time, it was 3 2-minute rounds or 2 3-minute rounds. Back to 2 3-minute rounds. But, you know, it's just, like I said, it's just possible that he just wasn't used to, you know, competing in that long of a match. But either way, yeah, Robert Whittaker, glad to see him win. Still don't know if George St. Pierre is going to get the shot at Bisping next, or whether it's actually going to be Bisping. And I don't know if I still can't figure out if Bisping was actually trying to respect Whittaker, or if he was disrespect. I genuinely don't know. I mean, the guy, you know, we all know the guy's one for theatrics. But, I honestly can't. I couldn't read what he was doing, throwing his belt on the ground. On the ground. I just can't. I just don't know. You know, I'm a big fan of Romero, but his burning that picture of Michael Bisping afterwards, I'm just. I don't know if it's a cultural thing. You know, he is Cuban. Yeah. So either way, it was a great week, great night of fights. And I'm glad to see, you know, I was glad to see the Hall of Fame. Glad to see Gaethje get his debut. Glad to see Robert Whittaker get his debut. Let's see. Aside from other fights I think that was all that I really wanted to talk about in The Ultimate Fighter. I didn't see too many of the preliminaries. Then with UFC 213, where Doom Overeem, I agree with most people. I think where Doom should have won that fight. But MMA judging, what are you gonna do? Jim Miller, Anthony Pettis, that was definitely a good fight. So yeah, that's about it. And stay tuned for the next edition of the MMA Freak Show. We are going to be doing the top 10 most bizarre events in MMA. It's going to be a doozy. So that's it. Thank you, and I will see you next time.